Hello and welcome to Stripcover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I am Adrian Ford, and we are here for a little bit of Harry Potter, and I say a little bit of Harry Potter, and I mean it because we're only doing 2 chapters for this episode, and if you have been part of this series or read along with this series for any period of time, you know that any time that we do less than 3 chapters, it's because we've found something particularly juicy in which to sink our teeth in these chapters, and I think that is what we've got going on here. So, Chapters 22 and 23 from Harry Potter and the Phoenix Theory something. Who cares? Chapter 22, what happens? Mr. Weasley is alright, but the Weasel kids and Harold Potter have to go spend more time with Sirius because things may have gotten more serious than people had expected. Also, no more Hermione, and that's okay because she is annoying now. Chapter 23, Hermione shows up. Hooray. Mr. Weasel is still all right. Harry Potter is definitely not a weapon. And Lockhart is signing autographs. And the Longbottoms are found out. Very roundabout way for all of these things to happen. It seems that old J.K. is getting a little more breathy through her writing as we go on. But I think that the main thing I would like to point out from this text this week is that I'd like to claim another victory. I am correct. And that is because I'm pretty sure I called it about 3 books ago that Harry Potter was a weapon. Otherwise, a true nihilist such as Moldy Voldy would not spend so much effort on him. And I know that the effort was put out there very quickly to smother that, to smother that, to say that, no, you're not a weapon. That's not what's going on. But it is because it was smothered so quickly that I'm absolutely positive that Harry Potter is some type of weapon here. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I made the argument that Harry Potter can be read as an interpretation for World War II, I believe, in the 3rd book. I'm not 100% positive. But around that time, I think, is when it started becoming, it started looking more and more to me like this was, boy, I can't remember what I was saying. No, it was not that, it's that the previous war with Voldemort was the World War II analogy. And these generations, Potter's generation, is that generation after World War II, which tried to really reestablish the world, and were acting with all sorts of guilt and the Cold Wars and things like that. I think that's the argument I made. If someone remembers that argument and you could comment in the comment section below, I would appreciate it, because I don't remember where I was going with it at the moment. But either way, I am right. But here's something, the main thrust of this video, that I would like to talk about. Where is all of the mystery in this series? Where is all the power? And where is all of the authority? It seems to be with men. And if I understand correctly, because I haven't seen the movies for these either. If I understand... Oh, and another real quick thing. I try to stay spoiler-free for this series, so if this is your first time joining this series and you would like to say something to me, make sure you start your comment with Adrian, A-D-R-I-A-N, in capital letters in the comment section, so that I know that it is safe to read, so that I stay spoiler-free. Otherwise, discuss all the spoilers you want, interact all you want, and I will avoid those interactions. But if I am correct in who played these people in the movies, it's all white men. For someone as progressive as J.K. Rowling, it sticks out an awful lot. And there's not a lot of diversity through these books. And look, I'm trying to stay as salt-free as possible through this. But I'm going to bring up something in a second here. I'm not going to call anyone sexist or racist or xenophobic or any of those things for enjoying this text, and I'm not going to call you stupid for enjoying these texts, but I'm going to make a comparison to another type of literature that I have been called sexist and racist and xenophobic and stupid for enjoying. So enjoy this when we get there. But we're 5 books into this thing, 4.5 to be technical, and all of the power lies with men. Who is the foremost female authority figure that we get? Umbridge? What is Umbridge constantly doing? She's constantly shepherding these children to the big strong man. Now, you kids stop this, or I'm going to call your father. That's what happens throughout this entire text, isn't it? We're going to take you to Dumbledore's office. We're going to take you to XYZ. So the big strong man is constantly used as a threat. And since we're doing a lot of Hemingway this month, I've been reading a lot of Hemingway this month. I'd like to cross-examine some things here. What are, like I said earlier, some words that are used to describe Hemingway and Hemingway's literature in today's society? Sexist, racist, xenophobic, old-fashioned, and you're stupid for liking it. What about J.K.? Old J.K. herself. Liberal, progressive, an empowered woman? What about all these people who try to make Harry Potter into literature? High literature. Mightn't that be an endorsement for reading J.K. Rowling to be seen as making someone intelligent? So give me the first 2 short stories in the Finkavigia edition of Hemingway's complete short stories, which are, and we got the first last Thursday with The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber, and in a couple days, no, tomorrow, we're going to get The Capital of the World by Hemingway. So just the first 2 short stories. I'll take ethnic diversity, or at least the potential for it, in Hemingway over J.K. Rowling any day. Any day. Now, the representation in Hemingway might not be what we want it to be, might not be as enlightened as someone would argue should be the case in literature, but arguing that something should be the case in literature is a moot point. What literature does is it holds a mirror up to society, and if you like what you see, then you like what you see, and if you don't, then maybe you need to make changes. So even in The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber, there is, despite the fact that the 3 main characters are white people, there is ethnic diversity in that story. And the ethnic diversity in that story is demeaning, it might be argued, but it was an accurate reflection of things that were going on at this time. And these were people who were living a life of utility in Hemingway. We are shown these people at their job, and they're very good at their job. If you take note of that, these people in the story, the diversity in The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber is good at their jobs. They're good at the only thing they're around for, and they're intelligent. They are reading things into these characters that are they're intuitions that we only get as a reader because we're privy to the conversations. These characters are understanding these things that we are supposed to understand, despite the fact that they're completely outside of everything. So as far as diversity, just 2 short stories into Hemingway, we've got basically more than through 4.5 books of J.K. Rowling. So there's one. What about sexism? What women do we hear about in The Capital of the World? The second short story in the Finkavigia edition by Hemingway. We hear about the sisters, who seem to be very independent, who ward off old matadors when they try to make sexual advancements, and who enjoy a night together where they are judging a piece of art. They have their own. They are authentic people. They have their own modes. They have their own moods. And by the way, that piece that they're judging, that film, they're judging based on what they think the female actress in the piece should be doing. They're judging the man's work by how they feel about the woman. Also, the other prominent female character is the owner of the hotel, a woman in a very prominent position. So going back to Hemingway, in that first short story, The Short Happy Life of Frances McComber, what woman do we hear about? We hear about Margie, who seems to win the day, if nothing else, but who also is very much in charge of the situation. She does whatever she wants in that story. She speaks down to Frances. She speaks down to the hunter. She sleeps with the hunter. She tells old Frances how things are going to be. She runs the show, and she ends up, in a brutal fashion, maybe even winning the day at the end. We don't get that for women in J.K. Rowling's work to this point. The most empowered woman, Umbridge it seems, just shepherds the children to men, shepherds them to Dumbledore. The largest female villain that we've gotten to this point, and this is 4.5 books in, Rita Skeeter, I believe her name was. She was defeated by Hermione, a child. Hermione herself. How does she get to Sirius's place? She lies to her parents. She has to lie to her parents. That's the only way she's getting anywhere. Anyway, we'll move on past that a little bit. But I think it should be noted that Hemingway wins both empowered women and the ethnicity check boxes there, if we're running such a gamut. What about men? We'll see in the Hemingway series that what makes a man is his authenticity and his utility. He is authentic, he is real, he is true. There is nothing for show. And once you remove because there is nothing for show, everything that is there is for utility, is for work. This is what makes a man. The man's man. He is otherwise, if he is the pretty boy, if he is not authentic, if he is not a utility and someone who is about business and about work, he is disposable. Not lesser, but disposable. You can completely do away with him. Because pretty boys just don't cut it. That is a through line with Hemingway. Now, in this second chapter here, chapter 23, what long-absent character do we have which is reintroduced? The character of Gilderoy Lockhart, perhaps? What was Gilderoy Lockhart? Gilderoy Lockhart was an incompetent twit. Oh, but he was very pretty. And what was his fate? He was destroyed by a child, wasn't it? Wasn't it, what's Harry Potter's friend's name? The Weasel Kid? I'm blanking out here. But basically, in effect, if you look through this chapter, he was castrated. His power was taken from him, and now he is just this shell of an individual. All of his autonomy was removed. All of his power, all of his force. And now, not even that which he was capable of before, not even charming the women, is he capable of now. The nurse seems to feel sorry for him, which is a terrible place to be in the Hemingway canon, but should it be in the J.K. Rowling canon? Should it be for an individual who has been defeated, despite the fact that he was fairly well-intentioned? Should it be the case that he is now seen as something to pity? But that happened because he was a bad guy. He was just a charmer. He was just the pretty boy who would sweet-talk women, perhaps. Is that what we're going for here? And he deserved that castration? Is that what we're going for here? Later in the same chapter, we have another scene of... Now, when I say castration, I mean symbolic castration, someone's power being taken from them. Do I necessarily agree with that term? No, but it is very useful in these means, especially with the points that I'm trying to introduce here. Later in this chapter, we have Neville, who is harmlessly a good guy, right? Someone that we've always sort of understood was on the right side, but if this is dodgeball, he's already on the bench. And whose grandmother, his own grandmother, doubts his worth and his masculinity through his utility, as he is harmless, stating that Neville hasn't got his father's talents. But I'm guessing that because Neville is viewed largely as a good guy, he will have some comeuppance in this story, possibly through self-sacrifice. Much the way that I think Cho Chang is probably going to be sacrificed or endure self-sacrifice simply because of the love interest that she had. But Neville, I think, because of this good guy being castrated by someone he should trust, I think he's going to have some comeuppance. But we often talk about the role of literature, and this is children's literature. This is not adult literature. This is not literary fiction, where literary fiction is to hold up the mirror and make you think about it. Children's fiction should maybe a little more than that be charged with showing a world that we would like, or showing a world become something that we would like. So there is more excuse for Hemingway simply holding up a mirror in times that were less diverse, that were women did undergo more severe sexual discrimination during the time when Hemingway was writing, because this was all prior to the women's movement. Not all of it, but a lot of it prior to the women's movement. Than something that J.K. Rowling is doing. But we often talk about those things, and those are strong ideas to talk about. Those are things that need to be discussed. The role of diversity, ethnicity and race, things like that. The role of gender and sex and things like that. But if we're bringing out that coin to flip, does not the obverse deserve discussion? So if the ultimate minority is always the individual. So anytime you were fighting for the rights of a minority, you were ultimately fighting for the rights of that individual. Because what you were fighting against is someone having the view that all of those individuals are the same, right? So we want women to be able to vote. Well, I don't think that women should be able to vote because my Aunt Margie is a twit, right? Not all women are your Aunt Margie. That is something that has oppressed people since the beginning of time. You know an individual and judge the rest of a group by the individual. But we don't make the same argument for men. The idea put forth in this text, as well as Hemingway, is that the individual man should be about utility. The individual man, every man, should be about business, should not be about looks. Now, one of the things, women's rights, feminism, things like that. What that fight is as much about as men not being able to tell women who they are, what they do, things like that, is that one woman can't tell another woman who she is, what she does, things like that. That is as much a part of that fight as anything. And it has to be, because the individual, again, is the ultimate minority. So should one man be able to tell another man what he should be? Should one woman be able to tell a man what he should be? Mightn't things like this, representations like this, fates, like the fate of Gilderoy Lockhart, because he was just a pretty boy, He deserved this castration. Mightn't stories and themes and mythologies such as this be why men are afraid to show vulnerability and emotion? Men who always get the rap of the stoic oppressors, when they are not these things, they are called out even by the female authors. What does Dumbledore do throughout this entire story? He basically pats people on the head and says, don't worry about it. That's about as condescending as it gets, but he's a good guy. Why? Because he gets things done. So if you're flipping this coin for the minority, do not forget that the ultimate minority is always the individual. It always comes down to an individual's rights to do or be whatever he or she wants to do or be. So all of this gobbledygook about J.K. Rowling being this ultimate... I don't want to get back into that, because it's hogwash. Just because someone stands up and says they are something doesn't mean that they are. One thing... So I've been a member of management since I was 18. And one thing that I've learned is you always listen with your eyes. Because people are definitely willing to tell you what they think about themselves. But they're not always willing to follow those actions. So you have to listen with your eyes. You also read with your eyes. And reading these stories, it doesn't seem that J.K. Rowling is as progressive as she likes to claim to be. That's all I have for this episode. I hope I upset you. I hope that you at one time enjoyed Harry Potter and liked it, and now you see it for the burnable rag that it truly is. If you like this sort of thing, hit the like button. I would appreciate it, and it really helps me out. If you have not already subscribed, I would appreciate it if you did that as well. There's a link to my Patreon, as always, to be found in the description below, and I hope to see you tomorrow, as this is part of the Dirty 30, which is 30 videos in 30 days here on Strip Coverlet, because, and in celebration of the fact that we passed 3,000 subscribers. And I hope to see you next week for more Harry Potter bashing. I'm not going to call anyone sexist or